Hello and welcome to Downtime Activities. My name's Matthew, and today I'm going to be going over how to start a D&D 5e campaign at 0th level, how you can stat out a 0th level character, and how best to run a 0th level story so that all your characters don't just die in the first session. Let's check it out. Starting a D&D campaign at level 0 offers some unique and fun opportunities in playing and running a game. It also provides some interesting and sometimes hard to handle challenges. Starting a game with no class levels will give your players the chance to really play out part of their backstory. They can organically gain their first class level, sometimes with the events of this story deciding the class that they'll play, and they'll truly build their character from the ground up in play. This is really cool and rewarding, but it's also difficult to do right. To start with, I'd like to go over statting a level 0 character and how best we've found to do this, what the kind of ways of breaking down stats and hit points and proficiency bonuses and all that kind of stuff looks like on paper. To begin with, your character is basically going to be built up of the base stats, whether you roll for them or do a point-buy system, their racial abilities and stat modifiers, and their background abilities, choosing a background still during this process. This will give a couple extra skill proficiencies and some kind of ribbon abilities and equipment, and useful for helping flesh out that level 0 character. This will make for a fairly simple character statistically. As far as hit points is concerned, we've decided to go with a base hit points of 4 plus their con modifier. 4 is a kind of arbitrary number. The main connection we made is that's your average hit points for a commoner. So 4 is going to be the base stats. If they're a little more constitute, they'll have a little bit higher hit points. We also decided to still have a proficiency bonus and to keep it at +2 like you'd have at level 1. This will give a reward for those racial skill proficiencies as well as background skill proficiencies and other things that are provided so that that proficiency still takes effect and has some play for that level 0 character. Beginning equipment is tricky and it will vary dependent on the kind of character and story being told. If you're starting this level 0 story of a bunch of street urchins scrapping to survive, then it's very unlikely they have more than a couple coppers and the clothes on their back. However, if you're just a young upstart noble who hasn't had a whole lot of real-world experience yet, you might have access to more equipment and more funds. So just have a conversation, DM to player, figure out who the characters are, and make the starting equipment make sense. In creating this character, I also recommend giving a free feat to players, possibly with some restrictions, to give some additional options in early play. This will give them the ability to kind of start working towards a class or a fighting style or something along those lines early on, or just give them another strange or unique ribbon ability that they can use in play to make their fairly simple characters a bit more dynamic. Things like having a player who intends to play as spellcaster further on take a feat like Magic Initiate to show the early traces of their magic really helps put a little more flavor on that level 0 character. One last little thing to touch on here with statting out level 0 characters is you really need to keep proficiencies in mind, particularly with equipment. Very certain races will get weapon and armor proficiencies, but many don't. For weapons, that is not a big deal, because weapons just give you that +2 proficiency bonus when you're using them if you're proficient, meaning that you could still totally use whatever weapon, you might just not swing as effectively with it, but you could still be functionally proficient with it on a case-by-case basis. You'd still be able to use it somewhat effectively. However, armor is very, very punishing when you're not proficient in it, but wearing it. So you, as the person running the game, either need to take this into account with how you kind of manage encounters or combats, or you need to fudge the numbers a little bit and make armor usable for characters or for some characters. I recommend a solution along the lines of giving all the characters proficiency in a very select group of armors, maybe just padded and just hide armor, or maybe throw leather in there, something like that. The kind of most basic, similar to clothing style armors. This will give them the ability to give a +1, maybe +2 to their armor class, if they can afford that armor or would have it from their background. But it will not be something that kind of throws off the story. Also take into account that classes like Wizard usually never get access to any armor proficiencies, so this will be a buff to characters who go with a class like that, albeit a very minor one that will very likely get blown out of the water as soon as they're able to take a spell like Mage Armor. And that's basically it for the statistical side of things. A lot of level 0 character statting is going to just be the beginning of normal character statting and just stopping right before you get that first level in a class. The characters will be very simple. That's why I suggest that feat, because it'll make them a little more interesting and have a few more options to interact with the world. But overall, the statistical side of things is pretty simple if you follow these rules. Running the game, on the other hand, can be a little bit tricky. It can cause a lot of issues when running a game with such fragile and limited characters, but it also provides for some really cool and fun and unique storytelling. But there's things you have to keep in mind. Any combat in a level 0 story is life and death, so make combat either infrequent and low stakes or very, very finely balanced. You can't be throwing big high CR or even multiple enemies at your party and expect them to succeed when they have very little ability to win in combat. You have to make combat make sense for the challenge level of a group of slightly better than normal civilian characters. In the same line, skill checks, the DCs for them, need to be kept reasonable as well. Many of the characters will probably only have 2 to 3, maybe 4 skills that they're actually proficient in. And so it's pretty likely that they're going to be rolling base stat modifiers on a lot of these skill checks. DCs of 15 and higher can be really, really hard for them to hit and should be shied away from to make problems solvable, at least the ones that require dice rolls to solve. Following along with that same mindset, you should focus a lot more on story and decision making over dice rolls when running a game like this. It's a lot more fun and rewarding for them to think creatively and get handsomely rewarded for that than it is for them to have to just keep trying to beat their head against the wall until they can roll high enough on this skill check to get past the problem. That's kind of good advice in general, to focus on story and decision making and to handsomely reward creative problem solving, but it gets exponentially expanded when you're running a level 0 story. It's really important that the characters thinking creatively and outside the box gets rewarded and gives them a better chance at solving problems that would otherwise be very difficult or potentially impossible for a 0th level party to complete. All this said, unless your campaign is based around low level play, for example an Epic 6 campaign or something along those lines, I wouldn't linger at level 0 for too long. 1, maybe 2 sessions of a level 0 story can be really, really fun, but the charm might be lost if some groups drag it out too long and stay there for too long. The kind of exciting, interesting, different style of play is fun in small bites, but over time, the characters and the players will likely want to strive for more and want to have the tools in their tool belt in order to achieve more. So use it to help build the story and then move on. A last thing to touch on here, communicate with your players about the kind of characters that they intend to build as they level up. This will kind of be dependent on the players and the kind of characters they're playing. Some players will enjoy that kind of organic creation process that'll come with a level 0 character, where the actions they take and the things they interact with in the world will decide their first level and later down the line what kind of statistical character they play. But a lot of others will have a much more concrete plan in mind for the kind of character they intend to build mechanically later on, and what their first level they intend to take is. So I would suggest building opportunities to naturally gain that into the starting adventure or story or world that you drop them into. For instance, if you have a party member who you know is going to be playing a warlock and they know what patron that they want to follow, you should find a way to tie that patron into the opening story, or at least give them an opportunity to interact with some aspect of their patron, and that'll be the way they gain their first level. This act of earning your first level through an interaction with the world and its NPCs can be really fun and rewarding. Your character just going through enough random tasks that eventually now they're a level 1 fighter doesn't feel very rewarding and cool, but if they meet an old retired veteran fighter and have interactions with him and ask him to give them some tips and training, and that's how they gain their first level of fighter, that's really cool and really rewarding, and it's them seeking that out that gave them access to that. Similarly, a first level character that wants to be a wizard getting acceptance into some sort of wizarding school or guild, giving them access to those first couple of spells in their spell book gives the same sort of feeling. You want that first level to feel earned in an organic way, not in a you went out in the woods and killed enough squirrels and wolves, so now you're a first level character, here's some cool abilities. In closing, a level 0 story is really, really cool, and while it might not fit to start every single campaign, there's a lot of campaigns that it can add a lot of really cool depth to and provide an interesting opportunity for characters to build their characters truly from the ground up. Just remember, as a level 0 character, you have to interact with the world in the way a level 0 character would. You need to make a character who makes sense as a level 0 character, who hasn't achieved all that much yet, but has high aspirations. And as the person running the game, you need to present challenges and problems that level 0 characters can solve, be it simple or more low-stakes combats, or even particularly more challenging social or skill-based encounters that have a high emphasis on decision-making and creative problem-solving as opposed to raw statistical bonuses and high die rolls. Level 0 is really, really fun, and it'll absolutely shake up the way that you start your next campaign. And that has been our take on how to run a 0th level 5th edition start to your campaign. Hope you found this useful. If you're interested in seeing this in action, we have an Epic 6 campaign live on our channel right now that you can go and check out that starts at 0th level and uses a lot of these kind of tenets and rules in its running of the game. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.